You guys better hold on to your hats because today's video is gonna be a wild ride. Let me tell you. So let's get into it. Hey friends, welcome back. If you're new here, hi. My name is Shayna, and in our little corner of the internet, we talk about spooky history of all kinds. If you enjoy my content, be sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell because I am here for you every Wednesday. Last week, we talked about the Blood Countess. If you missed it, I'll be sure to link it up here for you. Now today's video is going to be a two-part series. So this week we're going to be talking about the Defoe family murder case. And then next week in part 2, we will be talking about the Lutz family and the hauntings that they had to go through. So anyways, I'm going to quit jabbing and let's talk about the Defoe family. So the family consisted of Ronald Defoe, who was known as Big Ronnie, and then Louise Feo, and they had 5 children. There was Ronald Defoe Jr., and his nickname was Butch. Now, since there's 2 Ronalds, I'm going to be referring as senior to Big Ronnie and then junior to Butch, so that we don't get confused. Now, Big Ronnie was born November 16th of 1930. His wife Louise was born on November 3rd of 1931. Soon after they got married, they had their first child, Butch, in 1951. Then Dawn was born in 1956. Allison was born in 1961. Mark in 1962. And last, John was born in 1965. It said that Big Ronnie had a pretty strong work ethic and he made some pretty good money. He worked for his father-in-law at his father-in-law's dealership as a supervisor, and they were considered as like an upper class family at that time. Soon after their youngest John was born, they decided to find a home, a bigger home for their family in Amityville, New York. And boy, did they find a good one. At 112 Ocean Avenue. This beautiful colonial home is 3 stories and it was built in 1925 and it sits right on the water. It has its own boat dock. It's beautiful. One of these days, I'll get a home on the lake or something. Second home, whatever. A girl can dream. Either way, it was very luxurious. And they happened to buy the best of the best for their home. They were also considered very religious, so they had a bunch of crucifixes and religious statues throughout the house. Also, Louise's father had portraits made of all the family, so there were quite a few portraits. I don't remember. I'll try to insert pictures here for you, but her father paid $50,000 to get these portraits made. Wow. So there's that. Now there was some speculation that Big Ronnie was in the mob because of how much money he had. It seemed that he had a lot more money than a supervisor at a dealership would make. I mean, they're living in this beautiful 3-story home. They bought the best of the best for their home and their children. Or he could have possibly been laundering money from the dealership. I'm not sure. It's all speculation. It could have been like a family business. I mean, I really don't know. There's no proof of this. It's just, I guess, a conspiracy. Who knows? Now, Big Ronnie was known as a hothead and an abuser, unfortunately, especially to Butch. With Butch being his firstborn son, he just expected a lot out of him, even at a very young age. One minute he would hug his son, and the next minute he would be throwing him across the room. Just a very sad situation. Later in the trial, Louise's brother Michael ended up testifying about how bad the abuse was, and here's what he said. We were all sitting down in the basement watching TV, and I don't know, the boy had done something. All of a sudden, he stood up, the father, and just pushed the boy this way into the wall. The boy banged his head or part of his shoulder or something. And when he did this, he was 2. Now, Butch was not only just receiving abuse at home, he was also being bullied at school because he was an overweight child. So the kids would call him the Blob, Bucky Beaver, and Pork Chop. Side note, hey kiddos, don't bully anybody, okay? Never ends well. Now, I know Big Ronnie also abused the rest of the family, like his wife and stuff. There's some YouTubers that talk about him possibly being an alcoholic, but he's seen with alcohol in some pictures, but I mean, that doesn't mean anything, you know what I mean? It doesn't really say. Now, I know that Louise did leave him at some point, like she just couldn't take it anymore, but she ended up coming back because he wrote her a sappy song and it was called The Real Thing. You know, the 60s. He somehow got the singer Joe Williams to perform the song for him, but of course, the abuse never stopped. Either way, the atmosphere of the household was really toxic. Let's fast forward to November 13th of 1974. The 23-year-old Butch at the time ran down the street to Henry's bar, yelling, and I quote, "You gotta help me. I think my mother and father are shot." So Butch and everyone that was there at the bar ended up leaving the bar, getting into Butch's car, and driving the block down to Butch's house. Why drive? It's little things like that that people do that just make me go, huh? But whatever. Among the people that went with him to his house from the bar was one of his good friends, and he did note something in the trial that he thought was really odd. So they got to the Defoe's house, and what he thought was really odd was that Butch just went straight into the house. Like he wasn't worried about anyone else being in the house. He just went straight in, and his friend was like, "Butch, be careful, because the killer could still be in there, But Butch didn't listen and just went right inside. They all looked around, and that's when they saw all the bodies of Butch's family, and that's when they decided to call the cops. Now, when the cops got there, they immediately, start asking Butch questions because they want to know what happened here, see if he knew anything, And that's when Butch started to say that he thought it was a mob hit from a certain mobster, Luis Fellini, I think is how you pronounce his name. With the mob, I feel like you should always say their name with an Italian accent, like Luis Fellini. I can't. I can't. I'm sorry. Now, Luis was a big mob boss at the time, and the cops knew him well, and so they were kind of worried that they could come back and try to kill Butch, because if they killed the whole family, and Butch wasn't there when it happened, he could come back, So they immediately take him to the police station to keep him safe. And once they brought him down to the station, they keep asking him questions because they want to know more about the situation. They want to find out more information and try to figure out what happened or who could have done it. And that's when they started to notice that there were a lot of inconsistencies with Butch's story, and then he just started changing the stories altogether. So then they really started to grill Butch to find the truth. I guess they found out that Luis had an alibi, so once they started to tell Butch this and started interrogating him more, that's when Butch started to crack. And after a long night of being grilled and crazy interrogation, he confessed. He said, and I quote, "Once I started, I just couldn't stop. It went so fast." So after that, he would of course be arrested and put in jail. Later on in the trial, he had a defense, and it was a crazy one. I'm sure most of you know if you've heard of the story. But his defense was, he claims to have woken up at 3:15 in the morning and just randomly got his gun and went and killed his family. He claimed that it was self-defense because he started hearing voices of his family members plotting against him. So he was essentially pleading insanity. Now, there were some crazy stories that came out about Butch and his behavior. One of them was that he pulled a gun on his father while his father and his mother were arguing, fighting, and he actually pulled the trigger and the gun malfunctioned. So his father could have been killed then and there, but the gun malfunctioned and it just didn't happen. Another time he was out hunting with his friend and something happened between them. I don't know if they got in an argument or what, but Butch aimed a gun at him and pretended like he was gonna kill him, and then, he decided not to, and later on that day, Butch acted like nothing ever happened. So his friend was like, what the heck, you know what I mean? Like, this is crazy. Why would you do that and then act like nothing happened? So that was another thing that came up. But they do know that he does have a mental illness. And in fact, during the trial, a psychologist testified that Butch was an abuser of alcohol and drugs, and that he had an antisocial personality disorder. But he is still very aware of his actions. So it's not like he can't control what he's doing. He knew exactly what he was doing and when he was doing it. You know what I mean? It's believed that between the LSD, the alcohol, and the long-term abuse, he just finally snapped. But Butch claims he was possessed by the devil. He claimed that a dark figure came to him and handed him the gun and told him he needed to kill his family. So there's that. Now, Butch's trial would later start on October 14th of 1975. He was found guilty of 6 individual second-degree murder charges for killing his family. Then later, on December 4th of 1975, he was sentenced to 6 sentences of 25 years to life in prison. So he was guaranteed to not get out. Now, as you can imagine, there are plenty of theories because this is such a wild case in itself. There were no other suspects, just him. And the crime scene was very sketchy. The evidence itself points to a conspiracy, in fact. Every person was supposedly shot in their sleep while they all laid on their stomachs, and there was no silencer. That's the crazy part. So how does one person go around the house shooting everyone and not one person wake up? The defense experts did conduct an experiment with a 35 caliber rifle that Butch used, and they found out that it is so loud it can be heard from a mile away. So something that loud is like almost impossible for no one to hear it, especially if it's being shot in the house and there's a bunch of other people sleeping. That's gonna wake you up. Even the neighbors around the house didn't even hear the gunshot. And this house is in a neighborhood. Okay, so that means there's houses all around them and none of them heard the shot, or none of them admitted to hearing the gunshot, which really just confuses me. I'm like, how? You know? Now the parents were shot twice each, and then the kids were all shot once. So that's like 8 gunshots. 8. Now, there was no sign of struggle on any of the victims. So the first theory was that he went into his parents' room and shot them first because they were the biggest threat. And then after that, he had to have like woken up the rest of the kids and then had them all just lay on their beds on their stomach, and then proceeded to shoot them all individually one by one. But you'd think one would fight back. You'd think. But then again, if it was Butch, he's the oldest and he's a brother, you know, they're terrified. It's a family member. How would you react in that kind of situation? You know what I mean? They'd probably be confused, terrified, hoping that he wouldn't kill them, you know? So honestly, I really have no idea, but that's a theory. Now, the second theory was that he had help. Now, the police chief at the time never thought he did this on his own, and he was actually really surprised that he was convicted by himself with no other suspects being named. Butch's grandfather also believed that he didn't do it by himself, so he ended up hiring a professional to investigate the crime as well, to try to figure out what happened and who could have helped him. So he ended up hiring an ex-detective, and this guy was able to somehow prove that there were multiple gunmen and 2 guns used at the crime scene. At a private court hearing, his findings were corroborated by the prosecutor and the medical examiner. They literally proved that someone else helped him, but didn't know who it was, had no other suspect, and Butch wasn't gonna talk. So, kind of sketchy. Now, Butch did admit in one of his many stories is that he did have help, but he wasn't going to name who the help was, which I find that very odd, because if it could help you in some way, like help lessen your sentence or, you know, help you get a more comfortable time in jail, I don't know, wouldn't you try to name your accomplices? You know what I mean? So that's really confusing. It makes me think that, you know, he did act on his own, because why is he not naming any names unless he's scared to name names? Some big thing, like maybe could be the mob, I don't know, but just very strange. There was one time where he said that his sister Dawn helped him, the 18-year-old, that somehow she got mad at her dad or whatever and came to Butch and said, I want to kill the family, and then he ended up killing her afterwards. That's the thing, is that she's also dead. So I don't really think that theory is true, but it is one of his many stories that he said had happened that night, so who knows. And now the third theory was that the devil helped him. There are a lot of people that believe this theory, believe it or not. His original story was that he heard voices telling him to kill his family, and also hearing his family's voices plotting against him. And that is what made him in their life, supposedly. Also, he happened to kill them during the devil's hour, which falls between 3 in the morning and 4 in the morning. And supposedly when the veil is thinner, I think how they say it. I don't know. But since it happened at 3:15, a lot of people believe that. Another reason why people believe in the devil theory is that no one heard the gunshots. If the gunshots could be heard from a mile away, how come no one in the neighborhood, none of the neighbors, heard the gunshots? Why? Maybe the devil silenced the gun somehow, caused confusion. I don't know. Just really crazy theory. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's not one that I think happened, but it's still out there. It's still a theory, and it's a popular one. So there's that. Either way, whatever happened, it is very, very sad and heartbreaking because not only the parents lost their lives, but as well as the children. Dawn was 18, Allison was 13, Mark was 11, and John was just 9. It's very, very sad. I want to know what you guys think. I want to know whether you believe one of the theories I said that I found, or I want to know if you guys have your own theory on what happened or what you believe had happened, because I really don't know. I personally kind of feel like he didn't do this on his own, but no one hearing the gunshot really boggles me. Like, it's just like it really confuses me because I feel like someone would have heard it. There was a neighbor saying that they heard the dog barking, but they didn't hear 8 gunshots. Really weird. But I want to know what you guys think. I'm really interested in knowing what you guys believe and your theories. Let me know below in the comments. Also, don't forget part 2 coming next week, so I'm really excited about that one. I hope you guys enjoyed this content. If you did, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and notification bell because I am here for you every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Anyways, guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day and I will see you next week. Bye!